I'd love to introduce our next speaker. We have our keynote speaker, Claudia Romo Edelman, founder and CEO at We Are All Human Foundation. So Claudia is a social entrepreneur, an advocate, and a catalyst for change, a frequent public speaker and media contributor. She's a leader for diversity, inclusion, and equity focused on unifying the US. Yes, I am not in the US, so please, please, we need more people like you, Claudia. Hispanic community and promoting sustainability and purpose-driven activities. Claudia is the founder of the We Are All Human Foundation, a New York-based nonprofit foundation dedicated to advancing the agenda for diversity, inclusion, and equity through developing and hosting global, national, and regional events, conducting research and developing research pieces, publications, creating content, and corporate activation. A Mexican-Swiss diplomat, Claudia is also a founder and co-host of Global Goals Cast, a podcast distributed by CBS News Digital, which highlights global progress through the stories of champions making a difference. And she will be joined in conversation by our very own Catherine Zaleski. She is the co-founder and president of Power to Fly, the largest platform companies use to engage women in tech, digital, sales, and marketing. She loves working with Fortune 50 enterprises to fast-growing startups that are adapting to be more inclusive and diverse. Before co-founding Power to Fly, she was the founding managing editor of Now This, and she frequently writes and contributes to the New York Times, Quartz, Business Insider, Fortune, and Forbes on how companies can solve their diversity hiring challenges. She also blogs frequently on our blog at Power to Fly. I'm going to pass the mic to you two. So excited to have you here today. Please take it away.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Mariela. And we will try to lure you back to the United States. So maybe this talk will help a little bit now that you're down there in Argentina and in Bariloche, I think, right now. So thank you for that wonderful introduction as well. As you pointed out, Power to Fly is serving actually all underrepresented groups as well. So, which is very germane to this conversation today, as we're ending day 2 with our keynote speaker, Claudia Romo Edelman, and founder and CEO of We Are All Human Foundation, as Mariela pointed out. So Claudia blew us away at our February summit, and she really inspired us to give our Latin community members a voice more all around the world with this conference. And what I was particularly interested in is when she talked about how we really define what it means to be Latin. At the summit in February, Claudia said, just on the term, I find it fascinating. Research shows that no one cares really. Not the Latino community. 92% of Latinos couldn't care less if it's Latinx, Latino, whatever. What we want is to be paid fairly. What we want is to be respected and valued. And so I think this dives into the organization you founded, We Are All Human. And can you speak a little bit to the numbers behind it, the mission, et cetera? I know you have some slides. So.
Oh, yes. First of all, thank you so very much for having me again and for the incredible conference that looks really, really interesting and so important that we have this conversation. So thanks for having me. Yes, I have some data, and if you allow, I would like to just go quickly through it and present my slides. 1 second, exactly when you need them, they don't appear, right? That's always the case. That's not what I want, but just let me stop for a second so that I can make sure that that is what I want. There you go. Okay, now I'm going to present again, but bear with me.
Take your time.
There you go. No, that's it.
But
it's all worth actually the wait, because what I want to present to you is new. It's coming out of the census data that just was released a couple of months ago, and that speaks about a country that will be in nature multiracial. And I think that that's what that's what the census is saying, is that America is multiracial and will actually keep on growing in that direction. And I tend to believe that in that road, in that journey, Latinos play an incredible role, being the driving force for a number of things. We are the people, 19% of the population, 62 million people today, 19% of the population today, 25% of the population tomorrow, By 2050 will be 30% of the population. Can you imagine? Hello, hello, hola. Hello, hello, hola. It's massive, and that will continue being because we're very generous with our love. We're the most common interracial marriage, 51% of the population growth. So that will continue expanding. 67% of our community was born already in America, and we're 50-50 gender. But it's not only about the demographic, Catherine, if you may, it's about the youth and the age of our population. We're the youngest cohort in the country, 28 years old average. That is a solid decade younger than the rest of the population. Latinas, we are 26 years old average. We look young because we're young. But the most important data point I think that I want to leave you all with is the mode. Remember the median mode average. Mode is the most common. The most common age of Latinos today, the most common age of 62 million people today is 11 years old. The most common age of non-Latinos is 58 years old. That is 4 decades of growth of of potential of your employers, of your consumer, of the people that are going to be in tech, of everyone. 4 decades. That is actually the most stunning data point that the census has given us, and that means that Latinos, Hispanics, Latinx, again, whatever you want to call us, we're critical to corporate America. So recently, we just got the new data about the economic power of the Latino population. We were $2.3 trillion 2 years ago, with $2.7 trillion today. Just to put that into perspective, it would be a standalone economy. We would be the 8th largest country in the world. Larger, bigger than Canada, Brazil, Italy. That $2.7 trillion size of economy means 12% of the GDP of this country, 12% of the gross domestic product in the country. I'm like, that's massive. That means you can go out and, if you're Latino, you can look at anyone in the eye. When you're dropping your kids at school, when you're looking at anybody, you can just look at anybody in the eye and say, like, you're welcome. No problem, 12% of your salary on me, it's okay, and you too, and you too. And that 12% of the GDP is growing 7% faster than China. So if you start looking at the economies of the world, the largest, fastest growing economies in the world, the Latino economy is the 3rd largest after China and India, much larger than America. And that makes us critical for every industry, regardless of where you are. 68% of the growth of the auto industry, 68% of the video industry, and that will continue also affecting and being in the supply area in small businesses, because Latinos are hyper entrepreneurs. So we create small businesses faster. Latinas create small businesses 6 times faster than any other group in America. And so we're talking about a population that really will be in the driving seat of the growth of a corporate America. And the last slide I would like to share with you is about how the census also indicates how Latinos are going to be critical to the economy. 40% of the workforce growth in this country will be Latinos, and so pretty much there's no way that any company anywhere anytime will be able to hire without the Latino population, or will be able to buy outside the suppliers without the Latino population. And what I love about this is that it's giving us all the ammunition to break every stereotype that you may have. So in an aging America, Latinos are paying for the contributions of Social Security and Medicare. So we pay $215 billion a year in taxes, $100 billion in Social Security. So absolutely, we're not takers. We're makers. And if you start looking at all the myths and things that you have heard about Latinos, you guys don't speak English, you don't finish high school, there's no Latinos in tech, there's like all these things. The census came and broke those stereotypes. Latinos, 80% of our population is bilingual, 73% increase in high school attrition since the last census. 21% of our community is getting into more high skill occupations, and even in tech, we have a 13% growth into getting the Latino community into tech. So all I'm saying, Catherine, is that, just to level up the conversation and to start, in a data set, Latinos our Latino progress is American progress. And if there's one word that you have to associate with us, is progress.
Yes. Progress. I was going to try to say it in Spanish, but I'll probably
Progreso.
Progreso. Okay, I was going to say progresivo. I mean, you said so many things that just
This is progresote. That's actually what we are. No progresito. Progresote.
progresote. Okay. Me falta la práctica, so I have to. But this is fantastic, and I was seeing the chat box light up. Ariel Parata Montan said, these numbers shine the importance of improving representation in leadership roles today. So when these young kids become of working age, they honestly believe someone like them can have a seat at the table. So I'm inspired by these numbers. You're getting it out there. Talk a little bit about how you're inspiring others beyond conferences like this. I know you're doing stuff in movie theaters, et cetera. How are you instilling the next generation with the understanding that they have this power?
I mean, that is one of the biggest tragedies I think that is happening with the Latino population. That, like if I show you the numbers, there's no doubt in anybody's mind that we're powerful,
Right.
but we are seen as weak. We're big, but even ourselves, we think small. And starting actually with a data point that indicates that Latino, 77% of our population does not know our own contributions to the country, and that is a true tragedy for us. We have to treat this as an emergency education campaign that has to happen for Latinos to know of their own power and their own contributions to the country. So what we're doing is trying to do everything possible to put the data, information is power, and to put the data in front of as many people as we can, because what we also tested is that 82% of the Latino population, once they heard all those numbers, they felt more powerful, they felt more value. It's almost like spinach for Popeye, right? Like all of a sudden you're Popeye, but if you get the spinach, you're like ready to go. And that is what data does to us. So we're doing everything possible to get everyone to become a factivist, and we're mobilizing corporate America to get educated at the affinity group, at the leadership group, and just make sure that everyone in a company is aware of the data so that they can inform their own communities, because it's not only that it's important for Latinos, it's also like a business imperative. If you're looking at the age of our population, you're like, oh my God, I really have to start working on this if I ever want to hire or sell to anybody. And so we're creating content, we're mobilizing corporate America, we're doing campaigns, and trying actually to get as many people as possible to be an ambassador for the Latino community by becoming a factivist that is equipped. And for that, we're creating a number of toolkits. And if I may just want to say, like, we're finishing Hispanic Heritage Month, and I'm so happy that I saw more than 120 companies that never did anything for Hispanic Heritage Month for Latinos that activated with data, with tools, not only with a half an hour bad margarita just to check the box, but with true data and education and power. So I'm very excited about what's coming.
Yeah. Factivist. I love that. I'm going to tell my children to be factivists. So can you speak a little bit to some of those campaigns, why they were so powerful? Because we have companies, we have obviously a huge amount of people, thousands of people who are listening in, but then we also have people who are hiring at major companies, and they're trying to build out environments where they can obviously be more diverse and more inclusive. So what are some good examples that you saw at least this month where people were building those kinds of environments?
So I truly believe that everybody wants to do the right thing. We just need to make it simple for systemic change to happen. I've seen that, Catherine, in the last 25 years that I've been working on global organizations that are dealing with global challenges. So if you do frameworks, it's so much easier. And that's why we created the Hispanic Star, not only as a symbol, a beautiful symbol, I would say, to unify us all and to reposition Latinos as what we are, stars of business, stars of hard work, stars of academy, and so on, but also to provide a framework of action for companies to be able to engage with Latinos, like as employees, as the community, and as the consumer. pretty much think of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a framework, like a master plan. And whether you're working on gender or in climate, you belong to the same, and you have tools and targets, and you have the equipment that you need to make change happen. And not only that, you're in the company of a community of champions, like-minded champions that want to make a difference. So we created pretty much the same environment to advance diversity and inclusion, particularly focused on the Latino community with the Hispanic Star. And I think that a lot of the campaigns and the tools that we're doing are related to, again, for example, for the Hispanic Heritage Month, we created a toolkit that was launched 5 months before Hispanic Heritage Month, with the invitation for everybody just to plug and play. So we created a toolkit that had 3 main things: unifying messaging framework so that we can be singing from the same song sheet, unifying data sets so that everybody has everything they need at any given point in time of any piece of data, that everything you wanted to know about Latinos, and unifying communication assets so that you can display them, like in radio, in television, in your internal communications, external communications. So the result of that is that, people were able inside of their companies to be able to organize and navigate with a little bit more confidence, because you were joking about like the Latino, Latinx, but for a CEO, it's scary, right? Like in the cancel culture, no one wants to say anything that it could.
I find it scary, yeah.
Exactly. So we're like, navigate it with confidence. Here's everything you need to do. And we said like everything that you need, like a PowerPoint presentation, 10, 20 or 30-minute version so that you can present to your boss, or, here's a template for a newsletter that you can do internally in your corporation, or here's a couple of talking points so that you can start a conversation in a dinner about the Latino power, so that everybody, everybody know that that's something everybody can do. Everybody wants to do the right thing, and that's actionable. And the other thing is to navigate it with confidence. And we're very, very excited that our toolkit, for example, just in that period, was downloaded more than 4,500 times. And if you think that that's like 50% of that are companies, we're really going to be able to advance an educational campaign that can empower everybody and become a win-win-win.
Great. So I want to make sure that we actually put that link into the live chat, because I see people going back and forth. So hopefully if I say it, it'll happen. But
yeah, HispanicStar.org. It's simple, HispanicStar.org.
And you wrote a book too called Hispanic Stars Rising that I'm seeing behind.
Right. So we create a lot of, we do content, campaigns, and advocacy by mobilizing corporate America. In content, we have, there's a documentary of Hispanic Star Rising. We have our second book with 99 stories of Latino stars, that are making it and breaking it, so that anybody, when they say like, oh, I just don't know, I don't have any role models, we're like, here's a book. Read about 99 role models that you can actually have, so that, like your kids and everyone in your company can have it. We create a lot of campaigns. For example, for Latinas in International Women's Day in March, we have campaigns in public campaigns where we choose 30 Latinas in every city, and we just like partner with companies so that they say like, whatever company is proud of Latinas in your city, and so 30 Latinas in Chicago, 30 Latinas in New York, 30 Latinas here. So we're mobilizing also corporations to invest marketing dollars in not only celebrating Latinos inside of their organizations, but also externally. So working towards, like how can people invest more dollars or redirect some of their marketing assets so that they can openly say, I care about Latinos, I celebrate Hispanics, I care about my employees externally. So there's a lot of movement we're trying to do in order to bring more visibility to the community.
Fantastic. Okay, so we did put the link in the chat, and I want to start, I want everybody to also put in questions as well, which I'll bring to Claudia towards the end. I want to talk a little bit about unity within the community. That rhymes. But you talked about a lot of numbers, and I think in your larger presentation that I reviewed, you broke down how vast the community is as well. So can you talk a little bit about what kind of work's being done to bring everybody? It's just such a, you said it was like the 8th largest, fastest growing economy in the world. So how are you bringing everybody together?
I mean, like I
Question.
mentioned that, like the first point was that 77% of Latinos don't know about their own contributions to the country. A second insight, there are three insights that we have that guide everything we do. And the second insight is that 90% of the of Latinos identify as Latinos, but do not act as a Latino community. So we identify as Hispanics, but we do not act as a Hispanic community. And that really is the worst because that means we're fragmented. Mexicans don't talk to Colombians, don't talk to Venezuelans, Brazilians are like, no, don't call me Hispanic, I'm Latino. I mean, like, we're just like so hyper fragmented in, like, and when that happens, we live in, like we think small. And so we get into a little bubble. When you're inside of a bubble, not only you have like limited vision, but also you think that the oxygen is limited, and if you're there, you're going to take my oxygen, so I want you out. And so we do not have those networks of supporting each other because we live in a scarcity mentality. And all we're trying to evangelize on is to like ask people, particularly leaders of the Latino community, to bust the bubbles, to realize that when you bust the bubble, you realize, one, the air is abundant, it doesn't matter, you can breathe, I can breathe, it's okay. Two, we are massive. And three, the more we support each other, the more we create those networks of support, the more we create shared agendas, the easier is it for us to do the one thing that really unifies us, which is to go forward, to progress. So what we're trying to do in unification really is all about like making the case for self-interest. Because again, what unites us all is that we're all about progress. We want to go higher, we want more. And chat away if you agree with me on this one. All Latinos, all we want is to go forward. That's why we are rising above fear, rising above challenges, rising above pandemics, because we're just like a chaos palante, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that the higher you go, the lonelier it gets. And so it's a self-interest that you share the access code and open the door for each other so that you're not the only one in the room. It's harder to push you away. It's harder to actually be, like made lesser of, because we are going to be probably bringing a very different perspective, going to be looking very differently. So the unification piece for us is a massive, massive piece of what we're trying to do. Hispanic Star is a unifying platform so that, like it's almost like the rainbow for the LGBTQ. It's not a rainbow. It was not L. There was a bunch of L's and B's and so on, but they were not, like they didn't have that thing. So we want to use the symbol to unify us all so that when you see that in the street, that symbol, you can see like, that's good for me. That's good for Latinos. That means Latino unity, Latino pride, and also trying to bring corporate America to unify on supporting our priorities. So creating a shared agenda, pretty much like like the Chinese and the Japanese, they have historic massive differences, but they become the Asia society when it comes to asking for scholarships or entries to university. What is our agenda and how do we get more people to support us? And I think that in this unification battle that we have, that we're winning, by the way, this is when allies play a massive role in, like in helping us see ourselves, encouraging us, like understand that we are seen as what we are, like stars, positive contributors to the country, understanding that America is made of stars and we are one of them, but we have to unify in order to actually be able to shine bright.
Mm-hmm. You made me think of the Asia Society up on Park Avenue, and so is there even a large there isn't for the Hispanic community, is there? The Latin, there like a one universal sort of
No,
gathering place.
I'm like, not like that. Not like that. There's many, many incredible individual organizations doing incredible work. What we don't have is platforms of collective action. And that is what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to address. Under the Hispanic Star, we have the Hispanic Star Alliance, 100 Latino organizations and leaders that have one goal. Like we decided, like we'll fight for one thing, which is for every Hispanic to be seen, heard, and valued. And we can agree on that. There's many other things that we don't, but we can agree on that. And because the community is so diverse, it's super important to have shared dreams and shared goals.
And you have a lot of experience with bringing people together you were at the UN, right? And worked on you worked on the UN development goals and really bringing people together on that as well. So
That's right. And that's a model that, I mean, like that's a springboard for all. So a lot of what we do is very inspired in that model.
mhm. Yeah. Well, it's certainly, I mean, people know what you're talking about now when you refer to the UN development goals. And so that definitely worked. Can we talk a little bit about what I started?
Can I just say one piece about the unification? It's just for all your audience, we created last year with COVID. COVID was hard for everybody. So hard for the Latino communities, disproportionately affected us in mortality rates, in health, economically, frontliners, like you name it. But also, it, we realize how disproportionately we're equipped to come out of crisis, how resilient we are, how echados pa'lante. And during this pandemic, we created 30 Hispanic Star Hubs all across the country of group of Latinos that want to do just that: support each other, mentor each other, buy from each other, promote each other, call each other when you need it. And that group, of which I hope it will become the largest network of Latinos that want to support each other and want to be with each other, for each other, magic happened. They started actually self-organizing. We managed to get 20 companies to donate more than $14 million in goods, and they were able to distribute and support over 6 months more than 1.5 million Latinos, 450,000 families that didn't actually get, like support, because the last mile, we don't get, like a lot of support organizations, they don't get to where we are until the last mile. And so I'm pretty sure that those networks of support, those COVID was a great lesson that we can do it. We can unify, and a lot of allies can actually get involved at the community level, being part of those communities. And for companies, it's so important to have, like a network of Latinos in your city, so that they can become more Hispanic friendly cities. A lot of times Latinos don't want to move to places because they're not very Latino friendly. And so I think that that's where you start looking at not only the unification as an idea, but also unification by the creation of networks that help unify and support each other.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I was going to ask about COVID, and thank you for sharing about those networks as well. And I think you can find those as well on the We Are All Human site,
HispanicStar.org.
These are, yes, all great examples. Wonderful. So I do want to speak a little bit around the properly about Latino versus Latinx versus Hispanic, this conversation, because I mean, the majority of people who actually work at Power to Fly are either in Latin America or they're Hispanic, and we still couldn't agree on what the name of this summit should be. So.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, okay, so let's look at this data. The Latino community is 62 million people in America, in the States. 26 different countries of origin, 21 of them speak Spanish. 1 in every 3 African American is Latino. That makes 14.4 Latinos Afro-Latinos. 1 in every 4 Latinos identifies as indigenous or Native American. 22% of the Latino community is LGBTQ. So it is the diversity within the diversity. It's a massive group. And we're already, that diversity is super complex. So we're pretty much everything. Now, from this, from the terminology, Hispanic refers, if you look at it as a dictionary, Hispanic refers to the language, Español, or Spain, the country of origin. Latino corresponds to geography, Latin America. Latinx is a gender neutral denomination of origin. According to the census, pretty much, only 3% of the Latino population even knows that those are different labels and nomenclature. So like most of the people, when I said no, they don't care, is that we don't even know. 76% of the population really doesn't care. As long as you respect us and pay us well, like it's pretty fine, whatever you want to use. That 3% of the population that knows has 2%, like 2% of that group really cares about using the gender neutral terminology.
Yes.
But all I want to finish with is the origin of the labels and how labels can be not only confusing but also distracting. So if you start looking at how that came to be, because I lived like a happy Mexican all my life until I moved to America after living 25 years in Europe, and I never heard that term before. So I started looking at what does it mean, this what is this Hispanic thing? And for many people that live in America, they are just getting used to it. Like, yeah, we're Hispanics. It's not Hispanic. Someone invented that. And I checked, and it was the census actually. It's like some 70 years ago. The denomination was M or OTM. So Mexican or other than Mexican. And when you cross the border, you had to say, the guy had to say, like, are you Mexican or other than Mexican? And at some point they got rid of it because it was pretty a racist, like decision saying like more or less they look all the same. So let's call them Hispanics or Latinos. And so all I'm saying is it doesn't really matter. What we really need to understand is what is the meaning that we want to put into that label that is an invention of someone that got tired of like differentiating us between MEMS and OITM. So when they give you lemon, make lemonade so that we can actually give it meaning. So regardless of what label you use, when you hear it, it means growth. When you hear it, it means progress, positive, contributors to the country, positive, and that is actually where the focus is. It's almost like when people say like, get very intense about like Cinco de Mayo is not the Independence Day. It doesn't matter. I mean, like take any opportunity that we have to set the record straight. Latinos are progress. Latinos are positive contributors to the country. Look at our numbers. So more than getting distracted on the labels, use them at will, whatever you feel comfortable with, use it, but give it a meaning that we have, which is the most important part. We have to set the record straight, which is broken right now.
Yeah. I think that's great. It's certainly something that took a lot of time to really research and think about it. And I mean, like I said, most of our team is now I'm like scared to even say the wrong term, but it's from Latin America, et cetera. We have some, but I actually found something really interesting in the census. I when the census taker came to my house, she asked me if I was Hispanic. So, yes.
Oh yeah, because pretty much that's one of the questions, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the questions.
That is, we have been underreported, and that is a problem. And the census was an important moment for Latinos to actually show up, because we've been put down for so long.
Right.
Latinos hide their Latinidad. Like you have seen it historically with many other communities that are persecuted and so on. So it is not new. And nevertheless, like that, precisely that is the third, I think, that insight that guides everything we do. That is 76% of Latinos cannot be themselves at the workplace. So if you're Jorge, you have to pretend to be George when you come to work. You leave yourself at home and you come to work with someone you don't even know. So we hide on our Latinidad, we suppress it to a point that probably is going to mean we're going to disenfranchise. But if you're a company and you have Latin, you're losing not only like probably a revolving door because we're going to leave if someone can welcome us better. You're going to have a problem showing leg and hiring in the future, and talent war is going to be a heavy one. But also you're losing the emotional engagement that comes with all the Latinos naturally, our hardworking, our loudness, our passion. So that's why we created this instrument called the Hispanic Promise. A promise to hire, promote, retain, and celebrate Hispanics in the workplace. And in less than 3 years, we have more than 250 companies that have signed the Hispanic Promise. It's backed by every Latino organization that is working in corporate America. So I do recommend that if you guys work in a place and hasn't signed the Hispanic Promise, that's a great tool to get a hold on and sign.
Yeah, because I want to ask you, we have some questions coming in too, and I'll get to those, but I want to ask you, what can people do more of who are listening on this call, right? Or this, who are listening to this presentation rather. And you talked about the Latin Promise, but even, around inclusion, building up environments that really make where people don't have to cover. You mentioned covering. So what else can people be doing?
Oh, okay, sure. And like on the labels, that's why it was so important for, like I'm a marketer, right? Like I'm a marketer for social causes, but it was so important when I started looking how much distraction got into the labels and I was going to continue. That's why we created a symbol, because I was like, it doesn't matter, just see it. It's like no one will question, like, is rainbow with capital R for the LGBTQ? Like, it's a symbol. Let's cut it, right?
Yeah.
What can people do a lot? I think that the number 1, 2, and 3 things that I would ask all your audience and everyone that is, like that is here is get the data and absorb it, and then become a factivist and start looking at ways in which you can talk to 3 people. If you can talk to 3 people about like Latino contributions to the country and how we're positive, you're helping actually, 1, educate, and 2, unveil, so that it's not that Latinos started having contributors to being contributors to country now. We've been contributors, and we've been positive contributors since the 16th century. We brought agriculture, we created large-scale cattle. Even the most of the American symbols, like the saddle, the Western saddle of the cowboys, was invented by a Latino. So it's not that we're newcomers in bringing, it's like we've been shining all along like stars, positive contributors to the country. We just had a huge cloud in front of us, not allowing anybody to see us or see our shine. So the role that anybody can play is use data so that we can remove that cloud that is covering us, so that we can move Latinos from invisible to visible, from negative to positive, from takers to makers. So please become a factivist, get involved. Hispanic Star has all the data. You don't have to do anything but just receive it and share it and talk about it, and we'll give you everything you need so that it's a plug and play for anyone. If you are in a company, check out, have you signed the Hispanic Promise? Is that something that you're, like if like we have from the 250 companies, 100 companies are Fortune 500. So we can navigate any lawyers or any, like it's really an important corporate tool that is not going to take too much, but it's an important way for you to get involved into the only corporate pledge that is out there. If you're in any city and you want to be a volunteer, whether you're Latino or not, become part of the Hispanic Star Hubs. We do a lot for the community. And great. And support us, support Hispanic Star, donate, be part of the activities we do. Like organizations like ours really depend a lot on how companies feel and organizations and people feel that, yes, what you're doing is great. And because we're in the last battle, we're in the finishing line, supporting us is great. But the one thing all of us have to do is take action. Don't be a bystander. Don't be in the wrong side of history, because this is going to change. The dam is breaking. The water is leaking. People are expecting and watching for action. Diversity and inclusion is here to stay. And you can choose actually to be in the side that will for once change the history of Latinos for good. This really, we have an incredible window of opportunity for our community for the first time ever, to not be treated ever again as second-class citizens, to be seen as what we are, American citizens contributing and being able to be equal to each other. And that is an opportunity that we can do so that our next generations, your kids and mine, don't ever have to even think that that we were once treated differently, that every Latino young generation, the next generation, not 5 generations, 1 generation down, we can have Latinos being fully paid, fully respected, and fully seen. So take action. This is the last battle. Whatever you do, don't be a bystander. Be in the right side of history.
Good. And some of the toolkits were just posted in the channel as well. I also know that you're training up people around soft skills and speaking. And can you speak a little bit to that, Tim?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the social and cultural, like voices that we have in the Latino community do not prepare us to self-advocate or self-promote. Calladita te ves más bonita, mija, don't rock the boat too much, it's already. So we have to actually learn how to speak up and how to stand up for ourselves and how to be a public speaker and how to get that confidence that culturally we're not, we're not trained to do. So we do a lot of workshops, we do a lot of trainings, we bring as many people as possible that are willing to be mentors, so that the community can have also role models. If you can be it, you can see it. So whether it's things that we do or other Latino organizations, we're constantly trying to leverage everyone so that we can leverage and just maximize. So from public speaking, networking, to hard skills, to getting the community to be ready for the future of work, there's a lot of equipping people through training that we're trying to do so that we can help in what I know every Latino wants, which is to progress.
Yeah, you talked a little bit. There's a question around what role does media play in changing the perspective on Latinos, which is from the audience. So you touched on it a little bit, but this would be a good time as well to make a call for if there needs to be changes around how representation in media as well, or what's positive in media too.
Right. So representation in media is really bad. We're not seen. We're not in front of cameras. We're not behind cameras. And when we are, we're presented as someone we are not. We're presented as, according to the National Association of Hispanic Journalists of 2 years ago, so this data might have changed, but the three main associations of Latinos were criminals, pizza deliverers, and waiters. When in reality, if you look at the data, we're like the astronauts, the academics, the progress, the economic growth, the people, and so on. So we really have a problem because as the Latino population, we're 19% of the population, 12% of the GDP, but only 1% of marketing advertising. So people are not putting their dollars to market towards Latinos. We're not seeing, we have only 2% of Latino directors of television, only 4% of directors of advertisement. So we have a representation issue at the senior level of media organizations and entertainment organizations that trickles down to not being able to find ourselves in what we are. Latinas have a double disadvantage in this one, because we did a perception study last year that really indicated that Latinas are seen as are associated with our physical attributes. So sexy, loud, beautiful. So obviously those are the roles that we're given. And if you're in a company, probably those are the jobs that we're giving: receptionist, this one, that one. I'm sorry, what about empathy, strategic, hard workers? Like there's a world that is missing out there. So very, very important, the representation in media on the perception of Latinos and representation of Latinos. That's where Hispanic Star will continue actually trying to just bring a map together of, okay, how do we change perception? Well, addressing where perception is created. How many Latinos and how are we going to taking action in Hollywood, in television, in magazines, in tech, in this and that, and what is the plan? And I think that's where, because the demographics are so strong, we just need a plan to implement it and make the change. So I am very hopeful that that will change, because that's where the dollars also will be.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah, pizza delivery boy and criminal. So I'm going to think about that now every time I see something, and tweet back when I see it at the show. So we have a couple more questions in here as well to wrap up on. One question is, this is about your experiences at UNICEF, the United Nations. What are sort of the big learnings or the big wins there that you can take to your work now?
To be honest, I think that it's almost like I prepared my entire life for the job that I'm doing now. Like I culminated. I think that this is a culmination of everything that I was able to learn from these massive, wonderful organizations, where you're dealing with real global challenges that are very, very hard to tackle, like how are you going to win the battle against tuberculosis? Or, how do we deal with poverty and malnutrition for children? So I think that moving towards the Latino community where our challenges are much lesser of how do we unify, how do we change the perception? Those are easy things, like in a way, if you put it that way. So I think that what I learned most of everything is that change is possible. You just have to make it simple and clear, so that we can move forward. And that if you want to go far, go solo. But if you want to, if you want to go fast, go solo. But if you want to go far, bring everybody on board. And I think that that's where that mentality of the United Nations of 193 countries, as slow as it is, bringing all the Latino leadership, all the schools, all the people that we can into just like dreaming the same, I think is what, one of the things that I'm taking on, that that also allow me to understand how important our community is for the global progress of like a thing like the Sustainable Development Goals. So
Yeah. So I'm actually even on the site right now, which is a little naughty of me while I'm interviewing you, which is just the most beautifully put together, clear site about what you do. And I'm also, I haven't gotten to the part of what does success actually look like? And is it ultimately having more Latinos in the C-suite? How do you even measure perception? It's like, I'd love to hear that for my own edification as I do my work here. So, and measure change in perception rather.
I mean, there's structural barriers, and I can talk to you about that, like change, since you care so much about change, and you guys are so incredibly powerful for that. So there's two types of barriers that we're trying to address. One of them is structural barriers. The real nitty-gritty barriers that, without them, with them, we're gonna be able to generate systemic change for the future of the community and therefore the country. And those are four, very clear, very distinctive. The data has been there for the last 20 years. Number one is better education. Better education, better education, better education at every single line. Number two is better jobs. So Latinos are the most underpaid of every single group in America, and we need opportunities to be able to grow, to be entrepreneurs, access to capital, financial literacy, so better jobs. The number three is better gender equality. So we need an absolute, bump up for our Latinas, Latinas in everything, Latinas in corporate boards, Latinas in better education, Latinas actually getting the share cut that they have. If you're Latina nurse, you make 70% less than your counterpart. And the last piece and the last goal is better health. That was very accentuated by COVID, but it is, Latinos are the most obese of the country and the most malnourished of the country. We therefore have chronic diseases of sort and so on. So it's not only, those are the structural barriers. What we're doing about that is simply unify everybody to say, that is the agenda. Don't go too far away, invest on this. Let's actually just make sure that we're leveraging the dollar for each other. So there's a lot of unification there. Well, the other pieces, the ones that we can change today, is about dealing with the fragmentation so that we can unify the community, dealing with corporate America, making more inclusive environments for Latinos in corporate America, and having an educated community about their own power. So we have those three numbers and we measure them. 77% of the Latino community, that has to go down. And if we're able to make it down to 50% and then 20%, we're making gains. 76% of Latinos cannot be themselves at the workplace. Well, we have to mobilize 1,000 corporations. It doesn't matter until that number goes down. And then finally, have a Latino community that feels that they have each other's, that they can have a support, like networks of support. So getting that number of 90% feels lonely, pretty much, down.
Yeah. Well, we have numbers to work on. So, and you're polling, you're doing surveys every year to get to those numbers, to figure out how they're going down.
We're 100% data driven. We see it on, that's actually, I think that if you ask what is World Human, our role is we're data. We're a data analytical group that is understanding where the passions and the purpose and the priorities of Latinos meet. And then we try to actually get to that so that we can generate, again, systemic change the fastest.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a model that everybody should be basing their activism around, as well as factivism, and obviously measuring and moving forward. And so we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes. Do you have any sort of parting thoughts? This is the second day of the summit. Tomorrow's the third. We have a big career fair for companies that are focused on hiring people within these communities. And so, yeah.
No, I would say, as you know, like as a true admirer of your platform and of you, I really think that we have to understand diversity and inclusion is here to stay. It's going to be what sustainability was 20 years ago. If you're in a business and you have not started like evaluating your impact investment or climate change or so on, you're probably out of business by now. And that will be the same with diversity and inclusion. So I think that the message is be proactive. Don't wait for a tragedy to stand up or to speak up for people like the Latino community. Latinos are the future of employment, the future of consumers. So be proactive, positive, and understand that a lot of the pain points that we have are related to invisibility. So celebrate us. Be open about sharing how much you see us, how much you care. If you're an ally, say that to a Latino. Wow, I didn't know that you guys contribute so much. Thanks. Wow, you're up here. Like I manage you. Let me. I know you're hardworking, but you don't speak much. Let me pass on the mic to you. So this is here to stay, and I think that we all have an opportunity that will represent a win-win-win for everyone. So do something. Take action.
All right. Okay. Well, one more question did come in though. So people want a little bit more. Okay. So yeah, I did actually, it's a great question because I never asked you the origin story about, I mean, obviously it's clear what the origin story is about the organization, but around Hispanic Star and where you, yeah. Is there a backstory there?
So yeah, and again, like I'm a marketer, so it was data. The insight was that we were fragmented and invisible, and so the brief, if you want, is like how do you transform a community that is powerful but fragmented and invisible so that they can reach their full potential. So that was the brief in a way. That was the problem we were trying to solve, and so we started looking at the data, and Latinos are 100%, like 200% of a person, 100% Latinos and 100% Americans, even sometimes even a 300% of a person, because you might be also 100% Peruvian or whatever, right? So understanding that we needed a symbol to unify us all, a platform to showcase the contribution so that we can deal with the invisibility. We took this, this is a WPP gray contribution. It's a millions of dollars. We treated this the way that you would treat any product like Coca-Cola or whatever, right? Like this is exactly the same treatment of a brand. So they took the star from the American flag, the ñ or virgulillo from Espanol or Portuguese, and they put it together to represent that, like we're like that 200% of a person, but also that we're stars, positive, shining, and that America in the flag, you can see it, America is made of stars, and Hispanics are one of them. So ideally, this also helps on the unification of Latinos, but because when you see it in the future, you can say like, yeah, that's me, Latino unity and pride. But if you're a company, and I think that your question is, how did I get brands to go for it? And we have 250 companies that are buying into this idea, 10 of them using it as their symbol of Latinidad and their stamp, if you want. It's because there's no other thing in the market. There's no other way to show leg and say like, I'm Latino friendly. I care if you're in the store or if you're in an advertisement. How do you say that except if you have to say? But so we're providing a solution for the market that is genuinely engaging, respecting Latinos for what we are, but at the same time allowing for many people to have a visibility option that allows. It's shining too much here. You see, you shine too much already.
It's reflecting.
So that's how we're convincing brands, and because it's brandless, like it belongs to everybody and to anybody. It's like the rainbow. Ideally, we will see Hispanic Heritage Month in the future becoming a little bit like, my dream is like to have Hispanic Heritage Month every year, like Pride meets Halloween.
That's great. I love it. I'll be there. I will be there. All right. Mariella's back to wrap us up. Thank you so much. This
Wow.
was absolutely incredible. And I have some, you gave me a lot of ideas. I wrote down lots of notes. So
Ooh, awesome. Let's
some
have coffee.
partnership ideas too. So, you know, I will be in touch.
I feel
Thank
I'm on fire personally. I feel like the whole room where I am is on fire. I'm sure that people who are listening in, I mean, the chat box was blowing up. Claudia, thank you so much for your initiative, for your fuerza, for your power, for your initiative. I mean, I love that the symbol is, I mean, it's already listening to you speak. I can just see and feel the energy moving. So it's already creating some global unity. Thank you so much for being intentional about that. And it's just so beautiful to see how everything from your career journey and your personal journey, you said it perfectly, it has led you to where you are today. Can you leave some final words for people who are maybe confused in their career trajectory? You've got lots of people thinking about transitioning careers, lots of people afraid to share their authentic voice. But I mean, you are clearly, you know, a symbol within yourself to show, like, you know, speak your truth, be unapologetically yourself. Y algunas palabras en español, si quieres también, para cerrar todo,
Tan
por
linda.
favor.
Mira, ¿en español o lo digo en inglés?
En español.
En español. Mi mamá era basquetbolista, era jugadora de básquetbol profesional. Ella estaba en el equipo nacional de México como básquetbol. Y cuando se casó, tuvo hijos, perdió 2 hijos, se fue de economista. Y ella trabajaba en un trabajo muy serio, muy respetable. Pero en realidad, cuando tenía 40 años, ella decidió que lo que quería era ser actriz.
Mm.
And she took the risk and she was like, you know what? Screw it. I don't know whether I'm going to make it or not. I'm going to leave that very serious career of being an economist, but I'm going to follow my heart and become an actress. And I remember actually, like everybody in my family and everywhere else, including me, were like, and it was hard. I mean, like there were many times in which we didn't have food. I mean, like it was really economically hard, the chance and the risk. And I saw her. I remember seeing her one day when she was driving like her car going back to a casting or something. And I saw her, and I saw her panicking. It's not that she was fearless in that change. She did it because she was not going to let fear take the decisions of her life. It's like about being able to move from fear to love and from fear to action, and just like understanding that, yep, it's going to be scary and I'm going to do it anyways. And for us, the Latino community, we're that transition generation that requires that we're not fearless, because it's not possible to fearless. We're going to be rejected. We're going to like get the door again. We have to knock again. I mean, like there's so much we have to endure, the bruises of being a transition generation that gets the job done. But we have to do it. And it's not that we're gonna be fearless, but we're not gonna let fear take the driving seat of our community.
Gracias. Yo puedo entender todo también, pero.
Sí, muchas gracias. Bueno,
Gracias.
Power to Fly. Many thanks.
Gracias.
Yes, thank you so much.
Adiós.
Bye. Thank you so much.